Hi, my name is Tanya Andricks from Crossing Healthcare, and you are joining us today for our podcast called Mental Wellness. We are bringing this information to our community right now during this year of a pandemic because we believe that healthcare includes mental health, and we know that this pandemic has had a significant impact on the mental health and the mental well-being of most everyone in our community. So our goal is to provide practical information on relevant topics affecting everyone within our community. And that goes for today too. Today we're going to talk about the impact of this pandemic on a particular group of people that all of us can't live without, and that's moms. We all depend on the matriarchs of our family for so much. And this pandemic has had a significant impact on moms across our country, and it's been well documented in the data and the research. So today I'm excited to be joined by, once again, Charmaine Robertson Stoner, a licensed clinical social worker and the chief executive over our behavioral health programming. Hi, Charmaine. And Charmaine's going to join us and talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the clinic and what we're seeing amongst other patients within our clinic, and really guide us clinically as we have this conversation. But more importantly, I'm also joined by two moms, working moms in our community that have agreed to share with us their experience. First, we've got Katrina Brummel, and we have Sara Nave. And I'm going to start with you, Katrina. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself? And we'll start with just a description of you as a mom and as a person in this community.
Okay, so my name is Katrina. My maiden name is Brummel. I'm married, Gaines. I work with Heritage Behavior. I'm a community specialist, case management. I work with people with mental health and illnesses throughout the community. I'm a mother of 3. I will have a 6-month-old Saturday. So it's a lot of work trying to juggle work and home. Because as you know, if you have a husband in the house and kids in the house, the first person they run to is mom. Mom, what's for dinner? Mom, I need help with this, And so it gets stressful and it's overwhelming, but I try to have a routine for me and my kids because routine is better. I feel like it's better organized. I'm also a basketball coach at Johns Hill for boys basketball, but we haven't been in season because of due to COVID and us being out of school and stuff. So we're not able to have a season. And having the kids at home has been very hard. I have an 11-year-old son who likes to be busy. And it's kind of stressful trying to keep the kids inside when they're used to going all the time, especially with my oldest and my daughter. And with online learning, it's kind of hard. He's doing very well because I think he does better when he's by himself. Now, as far as my daughter, she needs to get back into the classroom because she's very sociable. She likes to socialize. It's hard for her to keep her attention span being at home in her comfort zone, trying to go to class. Because on days that I'm off and in the home with her online learning, she comes to the room about 15 to 16 times just to tell me little things, So it's kind of frustrating. So Sara, I commend you teachers because I know it's hard trying to teach if you're doing online learning with the kids, starting off with it. It was hard for parents and it was hard for the teachers to try to adjust and try to teach. But since we've been doing it for a while now, I think they're kind of getting used to it. I pray this is not the new norm and stuff like that.
So Katrina, I have a question for you.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
You said you have 3 kids. You mentioned a 6-month-old, an 11-year-old son. How old's your daughter?
She's 8.
So 8, 6, and 11. You work.
Yes.
And you're married. You have a husband.
Yes.
And you have a family business. Is that correct?
Yes. Kansas City Barbecue Pit.
Yep. So you have a few things going on.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to even have this conversation with us today.
No problem.
Thank you. I also want to introduce Sara Nave. And Sara is a teacher here at District 61. But Sara, tell us about yourself.
So I am. That is probably what I am more times than not. But I am a mom of 2 crazy children. Emily is 4, going on 14. Her best friends are my students. They've kind of helped raise her. And my son is 6, 6.5, he'll tell you. And he's my little introvert. They challenge me just about as much as my middle school students do. I teach 8th grade for Decatur Public Schools at Dennis Lab. So I've got an awesome group of kids this year I'm very excited about. I am married. My husband, Tim, and I have been together. It'll actually be 11 years in 4 days. I had to look at my watch. In 4 days, we'll have been together for 11 years. We've only been married for 2, so you can do the math there. And not only am I a teacher, but I'm also a track coach for elementary and middle school at Dennis. And it's definitely a passion for me. I think my biggest passion, aside from of what I do, is definitely getting out in the community. And this last year has been very difficult because we're not able to do as much to help as many people, but we're still trying. So that's a good thing.
Thank you, Sara. So it won't surprise either of you as moms to find out some of the information that I'm going to share with you. So since this pandemic has started, over 1 million moms have left the workforce. Pre-pandemic, women in the workforce exceeded the number of men in the workforce for the first time. It happened several months prior to the pandemic. As of right now, the number of women in the workforce is about the same as it was in the 1980s. So as women, this pandemic has impacted us in a significant way as it relates to our work and our jobs. Then on top of that, 3/4 of moms with kids age 8 to 12 say that they are under significant stress as it relates to worrying about their children and their children in school. So the impact that this is having on children ages 8 to 12 has been so significant as it relates to schooling that it is causing significant stress amongst moms. And then I found this really interesting. There is a professor, Philip Fisher, professor of psychology at the University of Oregon. He does this ongoing study about the impact of the pandemic on families. And what he found is that 70% of moms are worried about their own personal health. They believe that this pandemic has had such a significant impact, a stress response, that they believe that their own personal health has been adversely affected over the past year. When you hear that information, I'm gonna start with you, Sara, then I'm gonna ping to you, Katrina. When you hear that information about the impact on women in the workforce, and you hear that impact on our own personal health and well-being, do you relate? Do you agree? How do you feel? Does that resonate with you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we've worked so hard to get where we are as women in the workforce. And it's kind of a blow knowing that, to me, I make a direct correlation with women are still not making as much money as men are, which is why so many women were probably, this is speculation, but so many women have left the workforce because they were not the breadwinners for their families. And that's frustrating to me as well. But I completely understand, with their mental health taking a toll. I would be willing to bet that the number is much higher. But mental illness is one of those things that a lot of people talk about behind closed doors in closets, and they don't come out and naturally talk about. So I'm willing to bet that number is much, much higher. We just don't have a full picture because it is still very taboo to discuss mental illness, especially among women who, want to be seen as equal to their men counterparts. Or male counterparts, excuse me. But yeah, so I have seen with teachers, especially, I mean, we've had a decline in teaching or teacher numbers over the last, 20 years. But I have seen of my own students' parents or my kids' classmates, their parents, parents who working from home was not an option. There was no daycare available. Or the cost of daycare was just astronomical, that they did have to leave their career or their jobs. And it's sad. It's really sad that we're living in this day and age. So
Katrina, when you hear that data, those statistics, Does it resonate with you? Are you surprised by any of it?
No, because by the women being the caregivers in the home, I think society and men, if you have a husband in the home, sometimes feel like the women should be at home with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, and I feel sorry for the single parents, like the single mothers who have no choice but to go to work. Like for instance, I have a friend who was an RN. She just had a new baby. She's not with the child's father. So trying to go to work and take care of home, and she put her child into daycare. But just like a couple of days ago, daycare was closed due to the weather. So she had to make the choice of staying home with her son. As for me having a husband in the home, we alternate. Babies were sick. We had 3 kids sick like not too long ago. And I told him, because he wanted me to go back to work full time, because I had offered to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom, because daycare is expensive. And that's one less expense that we have to worry about. But he said no, he wanted me to go to work. So I went to work, but I told him I'm not going to be taking all these days off. We're going to have to alternate it, because I feel like we are a team. And just because I'm the mom, I don't feel like I should have to miss work because the kids are sick. So it's hard on moms. So yeah, I do agree with it, especially single moms, because there's a lot more single moms probably out there than it is moms with husbands who have actual spouses that help. So I do agree with the numbers and the statistics that are going on with the mental health with the mothers and stuff like that. So yeah, I do.
So one of the things I have watched is I've watched this long-standing following of 3 women. So the New York Times has been really chronicling the impact of this pandemic on women. And I've been reading these articles over the course of the last 6 months, and they followed women across the nation and really followed them as they've sort of navigated this pandemic. And I found it interesting. They came to this series of themes that they saw throughout the lives of women as they navigated the pandemic. And I just thought, it might be interesting to have this conversation, this dialogue about these themes. And I think the first word that came up, and it was early in the pandemic, and so this sort of takes us through this year that we've had. The first word was chaos. How do you relate to that? Have you seen chaos in your home, in your work? When you hear that word and you think about this pandemic, what comes to mind? Do you have a story, or do you have sort of any thoughts around that word in this pandemic? Sara, you go first.
Yeah. So being a teacher, we were uprooted in March when the governor shut down the state. And my 8th graders last year, they missed out on everything. I mean, I know that this is going to ring true for a lot of parents who missed graduations and kindergarten graduations and things. But my 8th graders, they worked really hard all year. And many of them had been together, for 9 years. And, graduating middle school, you only get to do it once. And we were uprooted and we were praised. And people were like, oh my gosh, teachers, it's amazing, what you're doing. And we appreciate you. And it was wonderful. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was wonderful because we were putting our families and everything else on hold to recreate the square peg that no longer fit in the circle hole, which is what education is all about. So the end of the year last year was absolute chaos. Just, having to modify everything and create like a virtual experience for our students and cancel field trips. And then with my own kids, luckily last year, they were at my school. So I was trying to teach from home and help them, virtually learn, because I'm not sure about you guys, but preschool and kindergarten, they're not self, reliable on anything, let alone picking up their socks off the floor. So it was definitely a challenge, but we rose to it. And so, yeah, chaos, the first 3 months of the pandemic was definitely chaotic.
Yeah. So Katrina, early in this pandemic, would chaos be a word that you'd use to describe your family and your situation as a mom?
Yes, it was a lot of chaos trying to get. Luckily, I worked at a church at the time, and so we were closed. So I was able to be at home with the kids to do the online learning, but it was chaos because I'm not tech savvy. So trying to learn how to do the Google Meets and the classroom learning and checking to see if the kids actually turned in the homework. Like the kids had no problem with it, but I had an issue with it. And to bounce off what Sara said with the eighth graders, I had eighth graders in basketball. We had a short season, wasn't able to finish it. They wasn't able to have their eighth grade graduation. I just feel like they were cheated, out of their eighth grade year. A lot of kids look forward to eighth grade, the send off, right before they have to go to high school. So yes, I agree. It was a lot of chaos, especially in my home, trying to balance being pregnant, irritable, frustrated, emotional, because when you're pregnant, you have a lot of emotions going on. I've had meltdowns to where I'm like, am I doing, good trying to keep up with the schedule as far as the kids? So I did my best, communicating with the teachers. And with having two kids in different grades, one teacher uses Remind, the other one uses, I think, it's another one that my son teacher uses. I can't remember offhand.
Classroom
But
Dojo.
yeah, there it is.
Yes.
But
Yep.
trying to be able to download the apps to see that she sent me a message. Like for the first couple of weeks, I wasn't getting the messages because I didn't have the app, but they worked with me. I worked with them. And so when we started school back in August, I felt like I was more prepared for it versus, in March when it just happened real quick as far as going to pick up tablets and schoolwork and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot. It was chaotic.
So I'm gonna go to you, Charmaine. You're our mental health professional. I think you're listening to these moms right now, and I can relate. I'm a mom also, and 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 hence why I know about Classroom Dojo. But Charmaine, when you hear these moms talk about those first months of the pandemic, both of these women are professionals and they're juggling families, a professional life. Clearly their work is important to them, their families are important to them, and you hear them describe all this chaos, that equals anxiety, correct? Is that what you hear, Charmaine? I mean, what's
Absolutely.
the impact of anxiety? What's the physical for the audience? What is the physical impact of anxiety on our physical body? So what's happening to us
Sure.
on top of all of this physically?
Sure. So yeah, and just to add, I think Sara and Katrina, you all highlighted those things very well. I think, some of the physical symptoms we may experience of anxiety is our mind is always going. Probably one of the first things, right? Because you almost can't turn it off. I think probably as a mom and at being a teacher and a business owner and a coach and all the things you all are collectively and individually as well, that's enough to kind of have your brain going all the time anyway. And then you just, again, we've talked about this a lot over the past year, but then you just throw in a pandemic as well. And so I think a lot of that mind racing, ruminating, meaning sort of thinking about the same things over and over again. What if my children contract COVID? What if, I bring something home to my children? What if, and so a lot of the what ifs as well, right? Anxiety, we've talked about this before, it's really rooted in fear and the fear of the unknown. And I think a part of what I've seen is sort of what you all highlighted very well. There's probably a collective sense of or feeling of overwhelm, right? I mean, there's just a feeling of overwhelm, like turn it off and make it stop. And hopefully that happens when you go to sleep. But then, truthfully, we know that sometimes it doesn't. Maybe those thoughts kind of creep into your dreams or things like that as well. And certainly that's got to be pretty exhausting.
Thank you, Charmaine. That's another thing I was going to ask and mention is sleep disturbance has come up as one of the single biggest issues that is affecting moms right now. And that, when I read about the stories of other mothers who are navigating this pandemic, one of the themes that I saw over and over again is I struggle to sleep. I struggle to sleep. Are you finding that you have had periods during this pandemic where sleep has been hard to come by? We'll start with you, Katrina, and then ping back over to you, Sara.
Yes, I don't get very much sleep, I think I go to bed between like 11:30 and 12, and I'm back up at 7 o'clock to start it all over again. And like Charmaine said, like our minds are constantly still moving. Even though I'm sleeping, my mind, I'm always thinking about ahead for the next day, trying to prepare for the next day. Or did I forget to check the kids' homework? And did I forget to send the teacher an email, to conversate with her? So yes, sleep, I don't even know what sleep is. I'm working off of maybe 6.5 hours of sleep, including having a new baby in the home. So I really don't know what sleep is, to be honest. But I make it work. I'm thankful for God to give me the strength to be able to continue to work. But some days it's harder than others. It's overwhelming. I wish I could take a nap right now.
I hear you. Sara, have you found sleep to be a challenge? Have you found sleep disturbance to creep in at times?
Oh, absolutely. We moved during the pandemic, and so it just, the stress that and anxiety that we already had, but especially the first couple months when we, laying in bed and we're like, what is that noise? What's that? Because your new house, it's creaking and what have you. But not only that, but the expectations, like she said, the expectations, did I send that email? Did I check their homework? What am I forgetting? It's this constant fear. I like that you put it that way. It's this constant fear of not having your stuff together, and being afraid that one of these days it's going to catch up to you. While you were talking about that, I took a look. I like data, but I took a look at my app that tracks my sleep through my watch, and for the last year, so in 2019, I got an average of 7 hours and 14 minutes of sleep a night, which great. Okay, not quite the 8 hours, I know. But in the last year, in 2020, that number dropped to 6 hours and 4 minutes of sleep a night. And we know how we are when we don't get our sleep. There's no such thing as beauty sleep. We're beautiful all the time, right? But we all need that sleep to be able to handle the stresses of everyday life. And so throwing on that added anxiety and the pandemic, and now what am I going to cook for dinner tonight? What's the breaking point? And I'm afraid that sleep definitely plays a role in that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you pointed that out, Sara. And it's funny because I've looked at the same thing. I looked at my overall health in 2019 and my overall health in 2020 off of my same Apple device, and my sleep was an hour less, and all these sort of measures of health and wellness declined in that year. And I don't think we're unique as women, as mothers, and as women in the workforce. And so I think it's important that we just have this conversation and talk about it, because I think that that is really why we're having this podcast. And if you're joining us just now, this is Mental Wellness with Crossing Healthcare. And today we're talking to Sara and to Katrina, who are two moms in our community who work and are professionals and are coaches and are willing to have the real frank conversation about what this pandemic has been like for them as working moms. And so thanks for joining me, both of you. And we're talking about these themes, and the first one was chaos. The second theme that I want to sort of bring up, and they go together, is drowning. This whole feeling of drowning, feeling like you both touched on it, but feeling like you're not going to catch up, like it just keeps coming and keeps coming. And I think all of us towards the end of 2020 had this sort of notion that 2021 would be better, and then the calendar flipped and it didn't change. How are you guys adjusting to the fact that this has sort of gone on and on? And does that word drowning sort of resonate with you? Katrina, we'll start with you. What's your thoughts on that?
Drowning? I'm drowning in everything. I'm drowning in laundry. I'm drowning in
laundry.
Oh my goodness, because I have to do laundry for the baby, laundry for the household, I'm drowning like emotionally, mentally. For example, like yesterday, between work and home, I was really ready to have, I'm trying to keep from crying because that's how I felt last night. Like there's not enough time in a day to get everything done. And when everything starts to build up as a mom, you feel like, what am I supposed to do? You know, kids need clean clothes, but I'm tired. I need to fix dinner because they're hungry. I need to help with homework because they need to turn in this homework by a certain time. Um, so this pandemic, I just hope they can go back to school in March for just like a month, just just to give me a break. You know, I hate to say it like that, you know, because I'm not trying to, you know, use the teachers as a babysitting thing, but them being able to go to school for them 6 hours a day that they go, to be able to have a teacher in class learning and helping out, it will help me out a whole lot, you know, because right now I'm the mother, I'm the nurse, I'm the doctor, and I'm a teacher that I'm not certified to be. So, like I said, I commend Sara and all the other teachers who have kids of their own, who have to, you know, teach our children on top of teaching everybody else kids, you know. So I bet she's more overwhelmed than I am because being a teacher, got to grade all the kids' homework by a certain time, you know, on top of trying to help her kids. You know, she got a preschooler and then a kindergartner, and I feel like these kindergartners was cheated out of their first year of school because we all look forward to our kids, you know, going to school for that first year, those pictures that we wasn't able to get. You know, now a teacher sent me an email about, you know, we have to take the kids' pictures at home and email them just so they can have a picture in a yearbook, you know. So I'm praying that they get to go back to school so we won't be drowning in so much, you know.
Thank you, Katrina. I just appreciate your honesty. And as I listen to you, I can relate. I can relate to that feeling of sheer exhaustion and looking at the pile of laundry and knowing they don't have something clean to wear tomorrow. And that if you don't stay up, the morning's going to just be like something you don't want to live through. And so I get it. And, you know, I think, Charmaine, when you listen to Katrina, what's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, Katrina, I appreciate your vulnerability, both of you all. I think that's really, really important. Ev, I think, you know, it's probably not an unfair statement to say every parent probably thinks that at some point when it's safe, I am really ready for my kids to go back to school. Like, I just need a break. I think if we're being honest, that's the truth, right? Um, you know, we oftentimes hear that you don't get a break from being a mom, but I think at one point, maybe you got respite. Maybe you got some time away, right, to operate in your other roles as a coach or as a nurse or a business owner or a counselor or a teacher or whatever our other roles are, because we are other things as well. You are other things beyond being a mom. But I think it's a challenge, and I think that we're hearing that from the both of you all, and again, I think that's probably pretty reflective of how other moms feel as well when your primary role becomes your primary role probably 24/7 now versus at least I had 6 hours a day where this wasn't my primary role. I think that's really important to note. And there are implications on mom's mental health and their relationships with their children as well.
I'm going to switch the words for Sara. And so we talked about chaos and we've talked about drowning. We've talked about exhaustion through all of this. That word, that theme, that's just, you know, we don't get sleep. We talked about that. What about resentment? So I think that for me, this word, I think, has been pretty real in that sometimes I'm resentful of um, maybe there might be another adult in your home that you might feel some resentment toward, maybe other women who seem to have it pulled together when you don't, you know, on the outside looking in, they have it together and you don't have it together. You know, I feel like resentment for the whole situation. Have you seen that, Sara? Have you felt that at all? And this is a tough one. I'm putting you on the spot because, you know, this is really being vulnerable to even touch the word resentment because, you know, we're all taught that we're supposed to just be, you know, never have those kinds of feelings. But the truth is we do.
So, I mean, definitely. I feel like anybody who's come through this pandemic the last year, who doesn't have some resentment towards at least, you know, what's been going on in the world is lying. And, you know, that resentment, those external things that we have very little to no control over, we become that resentment, and the energy has to go somewhere. And so who do we turn to? We turn to our spouses, we turn to our children, we turn to our parents. You know, some people turn to, you know, a mental health professional, or they turn to their priest or their pastor. But it comes out somehow. I'm not sure if you guys go on, you know, some of the news media outlets and see some of the things that people write. I've learned to take my pent up aggression out on some of the situations that are happening in our country, you know, by instead of going off on people, I do the exact opposite. I provide valid facts and details because I'm trying to be that person, you know, I expect my students to be. You know, you're allowed to have your opinion, but we say opinions are like bottoms. Everybody has one. They all stink, right? You've got to back stuff up with fact. And so, you know, the resentment that I have towards various entities, whether it be, you know, the pandemic as a whole, or in an offset way, you know, the school system, you know, for not allowing me to be with my kids, you know, to my husband. My husband has definitely been on the receiving end of my frustration and anger. And, you know, it all stems from being hurt. It all stems from that vulnerability and being sad and upset and not being able to necessarily outwardly, you know, nobody's seeing those tears, you know, nobody can see how desperate I am to have my students back in the classroom. They can't see that. But I can get angry about it, and I can have my voice heard, and then maybe somebody out there will hear me. Yeah, definitely. I think the people who wind up being hurt the most by the resentment are the people who love you the most. And that's, you know, your family. And you know, am I sorry for that? Oh, absolutely. But in that moment, you know, it's almost like a loss of control. It's you're so frustrated with everything. And the first thing, I don't know about you guys, but the first thing that went for me during the pandemic was my self-care. I've taken one bath since I've moved into my new house with my jetted tub, one bath. And, you know, what do I do? You know, my kids get bathed, luckily. You know, sometimes they're wearing, you know, clean pants if I can find some. But you know, it's you know, our self-care that goes out the window. And in a normal year, you know, I might, you know, take that moment for myself, and I need to reevaluate. But during a pandemic, you need to make sure that the people who you are providing for, whether it's your students or your children or your spouse, you need to also make sure that they're okay. Because, you know, if they're not okay, then you'll never be okay, if those are the people who you love and choose to surround yourself by.
So, Katrina, does what Sara say resonate with you about frustration and resentment, and then self-care? Talk to me about those things from your perspective.
Yes, I've felt frustration. I had to comment on her, like, as far as like being able to take a 30-minute showers, now maybe a 5 to 10-minute shower, because, you know, you only have so much time in the day. I get off at 5 o'clock. I come straight in, I clean, I get dinner ready. We eat dinner kind of late because I get off late and my husband get off about 8:30. And we try to sit down and have a family dinner, because that's not the new norm in some households, because, you know, different schedules and stuff. But I try to make time that we all still sit down and have dinner together. We tell each other about our days, even though the kids are at home. They still have some type of exciting days or whatever. But it's really frustrating. Resentment. Yeah, I try not to take my frustration out on like my husband, because that'd be the first person who gets it, is my husband, when I'm frustrated. So when I'm feeling like I'm ready just to blow up at everybody, I go to the bathroom and I'll take 5 minutes to myself. I say a prayer, you know, I ask God to help me through this because he is the one that's helping me get through this and anybody else. And then I go back and I revisit the situation, and he, you know, he's understanding. He's very understanding. So he tries to help out as much as he can. Being at home, I try to teaching the kids on how to help out more because they are of age to where they can help out with chores. Sorry, I'm on my work phone Zooming because my other phone wouldn't work. So I apologize. So as far as like the frustration, yeah, I get frustrated. You know, I try to take it out on too many people, but the kids have got it. My husband has got it. Even my mom, who has gotten it, even when she's just trying to check on me to see what I need. I have to say my mom is excellent. She's been helping me out a whole lot through this pandemic with as far as like helping with the kids. If I need like a 10-minute break, she'll come get the baby, you know, just so I can have some time to myself, because I feel like moms, we don't get very much time to ourselves at all, because even in the bathroom, you know, to go take a shower, the kids are always at the door needing something. Like I said, my dad can be in the house, but they always run to mom, you know, so we never have no time for ourselves. So like Sara said, self-care, I try to at least get my hair done, and that's just my time to myself, you know, trying to still take care of myself, because if I'm not taken care of and I'm not keeping up with my health, how can I take care of my family? You know, so I really try to keep myself healthy and just try to just take care of myself as much as I can, you know, through this pandemic, which is hard, but I'm learning to try to do better, you know.
Thank you, Katrina. I feel like the experience that I've read about from other moms is very reflective in both of your stories. You know, these feelings that you both are describing, even though your lives are different, you're feeling the same emotions as you navigate this pandemic. You're feeling all of this pressure, all of this, all of this responsibility. Everything's chaotic. Nothing's to be what it was before. Zero sleep, zero time to yourself, frustration and resentment, trying to channel. I hear both of you talk about trying to channel it the right way and still, you know, and then feeling badly when you struggle. I hear you talk about, you know, lack of self-care, but really trying. And it takes me to these last two words that have been themes amongst moms throughout this pandemic. Again, I'm citing some surveys that have been done through the University of Oregon as they look at the impact of the pandemic on families. And the two words that are resounding themes for moms after you're through the chaos, the drowning, the exhaustion, and the resentment, the two words that come out from this from moms are perseverance and hope. And so when I hear you two, you know, remarkable moms and remarkable professional women talk about all of this, I always hear those qualifiers. Charmaine, I'm going to ask you, as you've listened to Sara and Katrina, what qualifiers are you hearing as they talk about everything that they have experienced throughout this pandemic?
Sure. Yeah, I think that really sums it up. Perseverance, right? I mean, and resilience, probably resilience as well. To say that there's been a whole lot of things that's been going on is sort of an understatement. You all summarized the past 365 going on plus days very well, and that the impact on you individually, but also with your family dynamics, right? Because it impacts our families, and I think that's really important to note. I think when we talk about perseverance or hope or resilience, it's essentially saying that we're getting up and we're trying it again. So today maybe wasn't, perfect, and being okay with that. I think that's the other thing as well. It's okay to not be okay, right? The little saying, oh, everything's fine. It's okay if it's not fine. But then what am I going to do in order to sort of really step back to try to take some time for myself, which I think you all sort of highlighted well. And then obviously also caring for those who depend on me as well. One of the things I thought about was that previously, there's a lot of pride that happens with moms with multitasking, sort of I do this and that and this and that. And now it's sort of probably just solace and kind of getting through the day. I think that's okay. Like, I think it's okay to say we are in extraordinary times right now, and to sort of give, yourself the grace to say it's okay if everything is not perfect. Are they breathing? Do they have food? Do they have clothes? Okay, great. We're winning. Everybody's eating. It's not bleeding. It's not broken. We're okay. Right. And being okay with that as well. I think that's really important. And one of the other things I just wanted to say, there was an article that I read and it said one of the most revolutionary things you can do for yourself is rest. Like, wow, something so simple. One of the most significant things you can do for yourself. And so while rest might be an hour shorter, right? Like, I love how you pointed that out, Sarah. When you reflect over your previous year and you reflect in terms of what this past year has looked like for you, it might not be the same, but life isn't the same. And so, can I make this work? I think that's really important to note. The last thing I think I would just add is, this is something that a lot of us have heard if you've ever flown on a plane before. I want to talk about the oxygen mask, right? So we talk about that all the time, but I wanted to actually read a little bit of what they say. So here's the warning. In case there is a loss in cabin pressure, yellow oxygen masks will deploy from the ceiling compartment above you. Please make sure to secure your own mask before assisting others. Okay, moms don't do well with that, right? So we've all heard that part. The part that I don't think we have all heard is, how much time do I have? And what we know is, on average, we have about 18 seconds. We have about 18 seconds of useful consciousness, is sort of what they call it. Wow. So time is ticking. It's really important. And I think that's one of the things I would urge, moms as well. Katrina, whether it's that 5 minutes of going in the bathroom and saying people will be fine for 5 minutes. If you're not fine for 5 minutes, something's not going well here. Like, that's okay. You can breathe for 5 minutes, right? You'll be okay. Releasing the guilt, because I only have 18 seconds. So what am I going to do with it?
Well, Charmaine, I just learned from that. Thank you. I think that, what I hear from both Sara and Katrina is that they're doing this well. Not every mom out there who might be listening to this podcast today is going to be doing as well as Sara and Katrina are, and they're winning. That you can hear them winning. It is not easy, and they are downplaying the hard. I can tell, but they're being real. But not every mom out there who's listening to this today is handling this as well. And so I'm really glad that you brought up this whole notion of 18 seconds, put your oxygen mask on, take care of you. This pandemic has been a marathon and not a sprint. And I think that we started with this thinking, okay, we can do this, we've got this. And then March went, and then April went, and then May went. And then it's like, oh my God, this is still happening. And then the calendar flipped and it was 2021. And oh my God, this is still happening. Our lives still aren't back to normal. And so I think as moms, we're persevering. We are the ones that are persevering. We are holding our family units together. We're holding our work together. We're holding it all together. It feels like by a rubber band and a paper clip sometimes, but we're holding it together, right? But I think the other thing that I hear from both of you, and that collectively as moms are surveyed across this country, the last thing that I want to end this conversation on is hope. I hear from moms a hope for the future, a hope for their family, a hope for their jobs, their profession, and for this country, which has been broken through all of this on top of it. And we haven't even touched on that, and so I guess what I would say is that makes me proud to be a mom, proud to be a woman, proud of us collectively as mothers and women, that we are the source of hope as we talk about this. I want to just hear one last thought from both you, Sara and Katrina, surrounding that sort of notion of hope, but also if you had one piece of advice to other moms who might be listening to this podcast, because you two are winning. Neither of you have it easy, but you are here and talking about this, and you are persevering, you are taking it day by day, and you're getting it done. And I can hear that from you. You're both strong women. So I'd ask for you to just each talk about what hope means to you in all of this and what it means for your family, but then what nugget of advice would you pass on to other moms who might be listening to this podcast? And so I'll start with you, Sara, and with you, Katrina, if that's okay.
There has to be hope. There's got to be something to look forward to. For me, it's March 22nd, which is the day that I come back and I get to see my kids, my babies. These are my children that I have not birthed, but they are still mine. And the hope that we'll have a track season, and the hope that, we're going to be able to start school on time in August. And the biggest hope of all is that this pandemic has propelled children and not restricted them, which is what, they're saying, oh, they're going to be so behind. Yes, but they're going to be maybe behind analytically, but they're going to be so much more advanced, in technology and, utilizing other skills that they may not have gotten to learn, until high school or even beyond high school. And they are resilient. Children are resilient. And so it kind of goes along with my piece of advice. I do an activity with my students every year in January when we come back from school. And it's based on having a growth or a fixed mindset. So a growth mindset is, if somebody has a strong growth mindset, they are able to see the possibilities. They are able to, visualize their dreams and their goals and their aspirations. And we play a series of games in my classroom for 2 days. And the students, they record their data and they continuously get better and better and better. And every time they get better at whatever game or task they are doing, they get to ring this bell. And the only rule is when somebody runs over to ring the bell, everyone has to stop what they're doing and clap and show them that what they have done, that accomplishment, it's worth something and it should be celebrated. And it's always interesting at the very beginning of playing these games, kids will kind of shyly walk over and ring the bell and people are like, clapping. By the end of the 40-minute period, they're jumping up and down, they're screaming. We've got cheers going on. It's incredible. And it shows that kids and adults can rally around, each other. And so my piece of advice is if you're one of those moms or just people who are struggling, find the little win, find that little bit of improvement. You got out of bed today. You remembered to put your kids' shoes on the right feet. You showed up to work on time. Find those little wins and celebrate them, because eventually those little wins will become bigger wins. And pretty soon you'll start feeling better. And ultimately that is what is the most important, is that you are feeling awesome.
Thank you, Sara. And I want to be in your class. Can I go back to 8th grade?
I know, right?
Oh my God.
Class?
Yes, that's nice.
I would take you guys anytime. I tell all my students' parents, you are welcome to come sit in my classroom every day. I love my kids. I love their parents too. They're a hoot.
Thank you, Sara. And I love that. Find the little win. That is very practical advice. And I think I really appreciate that. Katrina, how do you feel? Hope, what does that mean to you as it relates to this pandemic? And then what's your piece of advice for all of us?
I hope that once the kids do return to in-class learning, that it won't be hard for them to adjust, to going back to in-class versus being online. Because one thing I've noticed, with this online, my son, he has a tick from looking at a computer screen all day. So I hope that it hasn't affected other kids and their mental thoughts and stuff like that, because mentally it's like really taking a toll on him. I hope that we can get back to being able to do recreational activities and do sports, because these kids need to be outside, interacting with other kids, because this can either make them or break them, as far as like being able to interact with other people. It's like I said before with the kindergartners, trying to go to school. That's how they learn how to socialize with other people. So I hope that this doesn't affect them when being able to socialize, especially in the first years of going to school. I hope they're able to adapt to the in-class learning versus to being at home all the time. So that's just one thing that I hope for, that they are able to adapt to going back to in-class learning versus to being at home and learning virtually. And a piece of advice that I have to all the moms is that one thing I've noticed, a lot of women, we don't stick together. But in this pandemic, I feel like a lot of women are starting to come together and be able to, bounce off of each other's emotions and feelings, and just tell them to keep their head up. We are going to be okay. When God made us women, he made us to be strong, so I hope that they don't let this affect them too bad to where they are not able to come up out of it, mentally. And so I just hope that they are able to just keep going. Don't give up. Keep striving to be the best mother, wife, companion, any role that you play. I just hope that they are able to keep going at it and keep with it, and just stick together as women. That's just one thing that I hope. And that's one piece of advice that I just feel to all the moms is keep going. Maybe we can start like a little group, a support group for mothers, because we need all the support that we can get from each other, because we are able to relate to each other versus a man able to relate to a woman, because men don't understand us, to how we able to multitask, work, kids, school. Women, we born to do this, we're nurturers. So I just hope that once we get back into the real world, being able to go out to socialize, I just hope that we all still be able to lean on each other, so that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Katrina. And I love your advice. And that is, as women, as mothers, supporting one another, lifting each other up, finding the wins. Thank you, Sara. I think those are great pieces of advice. And the fact that you will offer them is probably why both of you are doing such an amazing job during this time. I just want to thank Sara and Katrina and Charmaine for joining me today as we have this really informal conversation about the impact of the pandemic on us as women in the workplace and as mothers. And I hope that our listeners found this to be something that they could relate to and took some practical hints and advice from this conversation. Thank you for joining me for mental wellness. I hope that those listening today can stay well and find comfort in the fact that they are not alone as we struggle through this pandemic, and that there's hope that this will too pass. Have a great day.